2025. Nata pour nali kacha ñu wato kono kumen be keri president ko men be no yaya jamme ala nafulol mel yalon ko commission of inquiry londi len pour nga jube ala nafulol be nyamen bankoka wo commission on famale nga londi wa ko men ka jube roke ya jamme ka prakida president wato mi ay nafulol men soto won nafulol soto nyaade kala nga londi fa pareta mel marta ko la ka tamandi anin ka konti bo nyingi inata jube ko nafulol dol bije wol sikasara nole janning itel la do ko be ban nafulol men buko ni sol nafulol men buko motol nafulol men buko tractor wala nafulol me amira ko isi kasarano wala mol si suñano jannin do ko ban waya kendi ko itel men marta do ko ila do ko nyin ko no yaaji a sembo di le pour yo nafulol e kalankala wala e kenya kala ina ta disonota pour ko nafulol nyin pour ke wafu kabriye wafu ye dundi control me yalon ko man trama sakunda la control ko bari control me yalon ko kodobe mawala je bari kodobe mawala control mento asi tineo france sotono yanni man sakunda be sulala bari dula ken nyant lafto ko indila kabri wo firol ke ta fa paret ibe reporto di la wato ben wo firol la reporto e mawo natin delia a firita nyamen ima natin ya a kontoni na listo ima natin de president ya ima natin na man sakunda bari la tanyin nako man sakunda do wodo
oy ngam matin la we ngam matin
le katral amita nyawonya kaytol ne be funtilale wala hakindi mfaran man koronto mbe siri pour ka batu foni wato sit
okay bari ngol ngal konto mbela nga moy nyola so if you see ni aje like I played this part of Barrow's speech earlier on enjoying the dollar life to know in as much as people try to commend the speech and try to say the president came out and of course told the people what they wanted to hear. I just want to lay emphasis on this particular point. You realize that there is a variance between the English version and the Mandinka version. And I subscribe to the fact that the English version was what was written for the president to actually deliver. But the Mandinka version seems to be the authentic feelings of the president that he actually put in there. That reflects the reality, actually. Because when he speaks, he speaks about what he knows. And, when it is written for him to read, he's just reading from a script written by probably somebody else. So I would go by what the president actually said in Mandinka. As much as what he said in English could be commendable that, he had said his government is going to do something about it. But for me, my whole take is the president in his Mandinka version said, when they submitted the reports detailing the sales of the perishable items, that which they consider perishable items, some of the vehicles, the cattle, the sheep and goats, and so on and so forth, the pigs, were never submitted to him, neither to the government, nor did they receive any report detailing some of those. The president went on to say, inasmuch as they did not receive all of those, he knew that someday, when the time comes, the reports will be available. I have a problem with this statement. That when they submitted the report, they did not give you the details of, all those sales of the perishable goods here and there. You did not ask for the report, Mr. President. You did not tell the folks that I tasked you to do a particular job, and if you have sold all of these items and you submitted the report, I, as the custodian, the president of the republic, having given you this assignment, and you submitted your report, and your report has missing items on the basis of, those perishable goods that you classified as perishable that you sold, and you never brought a report in relation to that. What exactly is that? Now, the president said he was waiting because he knew someday the report will come out. The president, were you waiting for God to bring the reports down, or were you waiting for Mustafa to do this empirical research or investigation to actually bring about this, findings for you to actually get to that point? So that means there is complicity in the area, in that particular area. So specifically, I think it's either gross incompetence from the head of state, it's either negligence, or really like we are all part of this whole game, so we did not care. But first, before we actually look at the president waiting that someday the report will be coming out, but from where? Mr. President, you instituted this commission. You know the TOR of the commission. You know the mandate of the commission. Now, they probably came to you that some of the items cannot wait until the end of the commission. They are perishable goods and they can easily get damaged or whatever. Or they could get spoiled, and they went about selling them. But that going about selling them, is that even legal? Because in the first place, when you wanted Jammeh's assets to be frozen, you went to court and got a court order to freeze them. Now, you set up a commission. At one point, when you wanted to sell some of them, you went to court to actually unfreeze them. But first, you did not get that court order from the lady judge. And then what you people manipulatively did was to actually use that, anti-Jammeh activist as a, High Court Judge Jete to get that decision to go about selling the landed properties. But which judge gave you the decision to go about selling the perishable goods that you refer to as perishable, like the cows, the sheep and the goats and the pigs and some of the cars? Which judge gave you that particular decision to go about selling those? That means you did not take that matter to court. So that means you people, or the commission in its own whatever thinking, just decided that, how do you call those people? The Sirif division could just go about selling those items without following due process. Mr. President, as the president of the republic, you ought to be giving all the reports that are required, because you set up this commission, you set the TOR of this commission, you gave this assignment to these people, paying them millions of Gambian taxpayers' money. At the end of the day, what did they do? They sold a lot of items at giveaway prices. Still, they did not give you a report in 2019 up till date, until an investigative journalist had to come out to say that some of these things were actually, giving out at probably giveaway prices. That is the time that your government had to come out. Until this moment, your government did not even show us the sales of this cattle, the sales of the sheep, the goats, and so on and so forth. So were you waiting for God to come down, or by nature, the report will fall from the sky onto your table? Mr. President, because and the funny thing is that you're instituting all this whatever investigation here and there, when the chief is part of the thieves, who is actually going to actually hold the chief accountable? Because some of those properties, we know that some of them ended up with your surrogates and party militants. Some of the landed assets were shared among some of you. So who is going to investigate who? But let's draw the curtains within, the parameters of your speech. Mr. President, you basically said that you received volumes of reports, but these reports did not detail or did not contain issues regarding the sales of these particular items. But you did not ask the commission, where is this report? And that is your responsibility as a head of state. If you are a proactive leader, when you give people a responsibility and they executed that responsibility and came back to you with a report, but this report did not have key elements of the sales of assets that they were presiding over, and you did not bother to ask them the report. For the last 5 years, you did not care. For you, it was okay. They don't need to give you the report. It's good. Someday, by divine intervention, the reports will fall from the sky. This is exactly what you're telling us. Because I saw somebody who come to Melville's post and tell me that I need to go and learn Mandinka again. That Mandinka doing it. It me along go full ding was half one thing. I Mandinka kankarang. Ye 5 for my phone along. I'm a phone along. I'm a Kenya along. You know, some of these folks think, you know, I don't, either it is youthful exuberance or utter arrogance and rudeness that you think you can basically tell people what you think you know when you know nothing. Because Segwedeng, in a sense, you know, dude, basically we talk about who killed the cops because we know our own homie from the hood did not kill the cops. Folks like you hate to hear that, but folks like you were basically defending a rape case that was before the court. Why didn't you tell us at that time that the case was before the court and nobody needed to speak about it? But of course, you hate to hear who killed the cops because you all know that the regime you're supporting actually killed the cops. And out of nothing, people countered you professionally on that. You decided to unfriend people. If you unfriend me, that's very easy and quite very normal to deal with because I don't really care about, you know, what a rat got to do in his or her hole. I don't really. If respect is put aside, I don't give a fucking dead rat to whatever, you know, J5O thinks. Nigga, you talk about people that probably don't know you. Some of us grow up with some of you and then we know, you know, it's probably Facebook that you can talk shit because, you know, that's what it is. But the fact of the matter is that yesterday you were defending a rape case here, which was before the court. Why didn't you wait for it to actually end before you actually talk about it? We said Hussein Obojang did not kill the cops. The regime killed the cops. And let me tell you one thing. We are not like activists. I am personally an opposition to this regime because the regime killed the cops and framed the brother. I don't care what you people think. That's one thing you got to understand. Because you don't unfriend somebody and the next minute you jump on a particular discussion and say, oh, you got to go learn Mandinka. I am born by a Mandinka woman, not you who is born by a fuller woman to tell me what language I got to learn. So you got to shut that crap up. So consider this an attack or whatever, and I'm ready to battle it out with you. Sekwejeng, you are just an indisciplined, disgruntled idiot. That's basically what I can conclude on that aspect. But continuing on the president's speech. If the president felt it was very normal to come and tell Gambians that, you know, they did not give me all the necessary reports at the time, and some of the revelations are quite new to me. But who established the commission, Mr. President? Second, you established the commission. You should know the TOR of the commission. But you said that you people picked Alpha Capital to actually be the whatever, receiver because government did not have the capacity to do so. Now I want to refer you back to what GRTS has just posted on a newscast showing some of Jammeh's very, dirty looking vehicles where Dr. Ismail Assise said that the State House or the Office of the President stopped them from selling those cars because the prices that were offered were undervalued and then they stopped it. So that means vehicles that were sold for 5,000, 10,000, 12,000, 20,000, you could have stopped that too. If what Dr. Caesar said in the GRTS newscast just moments ago is true, is something to go by, that the Office of the President actually stopped the sale of the limousines and all those vehicles that are looking so dusty and dirty in State House because the price offered by the buyers was too little. How comes the Office of the President did not stop them from selling cars for 5,000? Elamansa Kundam is quite complicit in every aspect of the sales of these assets because it's just a very corrupt government. There is nothing that we can try to make it nice. The government is corrupt beyond repairable. And that's very evident. That if Dr. Ismail Assise in damage control could say that the limousines and so on that people thought were sold, they thought they are trying to damage control, but he's actually exposing, the president further. Because he said, Office of the President stopped the sales of those items. So that means the Office of the President had the authority to stop the sale of some of the items. So if they have the authority to stop the sales of the items, why didn't they stop the sale of items for $5,000? Why didn't they stop the sales of televisions for $500? And knowing Yaya Jammeh and knowing his insatiable desire for luxurious wealth, go. Yaya Jammeh is more than 20, 30,000. But you sold the entire vehicle for 10,000, 5,000. But Barrow, you equally told us that folks were actually intermittently coming to report to the cabinet. Now let's assume, like somebody suggested earlier, that the ministerial committee was only set up after the commission's recommendations. That means while the commission was going on, Alhaji Mamadi Kurang was fired. And Alhaji Mamadi Kurang's sacking was basically a recommendation from Batambedu to you, the president, to actually take that decision. But Alhaji Mamadi Kurang has wrote to the president to tell him that some things were very wrong in the commission. What did the president do about Mamadi Kurang's allegations? That means you did not take it seriously. Probably you just trash it in the bin and sack the guy because you're not interested in justice and fair play. Because Nito Kontoliako, you did not know some of the things that were happening. But Mamadi Kurang raised an alarm when it was not fashionable to do so. When the coalition government was at its peak, that nobody thought anybody would challenge anything that was happening within the commissions or whatever that was established by this government. But Kurang took that bold step to write to you at the office of the president that something is fundamentally wrong within the commission. But what did you do? So, Mr. President, you cannot tell us that you were not told that something was wrong within the commission. You were told. But the person who told you paid the bigger price for it because you had to fire him for telling you what was happening within the commission. What am I talking? So I'm just hearing them for the first time, but it was brought to your attention that something was fundamentally wrong. And you, as the head of state and the custodian of our republic, you should have taken actions to actually investigate and find out what was happening. But what really happened? When the new government came, I told people the strength of this new government lies in its vagueness. Because any time that a party is not happy, all that we say, this is not what we voted for. What actually did we vote for? Because we know it was a democracy and the president had to leave most of these ministers to work independently, thinking that they are going to actually work in the best interest of the country. But what did some of them do? They did not work in the best interest of the country. Melville, I'm going to pick you. We got to continue this, but we still got to have this conversation tomorrow, though. But come on in, I'll be happy to have this conversation. So, if the president could say in Mandinka Ko, Mel is still joining you. I'm not sure why it's taking too long, but hopefully you get in a moment. If the president could tell us that, a report was sambanan and the Barakabiri report was sambanang. Details of these sales were not in the report. Mr. President, that now has the question. Did you ask them where is the rest of the report? Where is this missing component of the report? Equally, you went ahead to say that, I know someday the report will come out because government works on documentation. So, Mr. President, how would you expect the report to come out? By divine interventions, the report will actually fall from the sky. That means you had failed in your responsibilities as the head of state who actually instituted a commission, gave them a responsibility or gave them a task to accomplish. At the end of the day, they give you an incomplete report and you did not ask for a complete report. And you thought someday, somehow, the report will fall from the sky.
Good evening, doctor.
Hey, yo, how you doing, my man? I can't see you, but I can hear you.
As soon as I came in, I can't see you. I don't know why.
Well, earlier on, I couldn't hear you. But now I cannot see you.
Now I can't. I can't see you either. You want me to go off and come back?
Yeah, probably.
I don't know why.
Probably that would do.
Okay.
Let's see how that works. I'm going to send you an invite again. Let's see. Yeah, so try to come on in. Let me accept that and let's see how that goes. So basically, President I mean for Tubabu Kangola and I mean for Manika Kangola, Fatam Fanso Bijele, there is a bit of difference. And I believe in what the president said in Mandinka because that is the president's statement. But what is actually written for him probably by, government, I think that is the statement of the government. And I also agree with the statement of the government that the government need to do something about this whole case. Yeah, remember wants to come in, so we are open to divergent opinions. Either you support the president or anybody can say anything, and this is a democratic space. I'm not really like a bully or whatever. I allow anybody to say anything and anyhow you feel. Hey Mbemba, welcome in.
Yes, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Yeah, uncle mbira life for jibe kan no what time
okay if I president la moy la kodi.
Absolutely.
So you listen to both the English version and the Mandinka version. What do you make up of it?
Yeah, Absolutely, but I don't know. Nte muna muntela problem what you know. I think tax force ni nga email do follow kenu before can tax force dolo.
Right.
Nte problem soto wala. Nte problem soto wala. No, obviously, yala gamme no kugile nyanda kami understand na. Billa wala ika mo tale ya plaso diala already ya fa do okay example comme bi ndala bun kono jang ko na mo karfa na bun kono la jangiro lati la komino na bun ta na bun barate so na fe be bun kono because ngaje ko na fe ko sunya na bun kono I have to ask you munem problem ot
No,
so size and
nsonta wala nanko president fana at some point min ketala
ha
comme yalong ejikita molle latela
ha
inara nyin kusi faka beka muru netela kan.
absolutely
But also, we
absolutely
cannot fault him a lot because when the new government came in, we know Jammeh's style was micromanaging almost every ministry. So to
absolutely
do away with that, the president thought that he had the perfect team in place who are able to do their job and they have the education, they have the experience, they have the exposure. Like
yeah
the likes of Batambedu that they come to us and say they have international appointment, they walk
but
around the world and all that.
but
Near
but,
dog
but
what you will let all micromanage.
But
You would let them do the work.
why these people, you know, they have to learn to the country, you know, it's not about Barrow, it's about the nation. That is the most important thing. But they always fail people, and you know, it's about privilege. This is privilege for them. It's a privilege.
Well,
It's a privilege because mo jamal bi je message palaso keno, message palaso marano, message palaso karano, message dogo keno je. That is the most important thing. But the privilege you can use, you know, you can use other way around, different from, you know, men kumara banko.
Min fana nada president batandi wala nyinde ko yalong
Yeah.
ni lata mola fala na tambira so ko itemu banko nyaton ko ti banko mol bebete koto lanno nana buka tambinde ni responsibility di mola it responsibility goes with accountability. But I think he overbelieved in those people to a point that he thinks they will never do bad because they are saints and they are probably whatever. And then he sat back and just watching. But when Kurang brought this issue to his attention, he knew then he cannot just take side of the recommendation from Ba. Because the president seemed to have given Ba a free ride. Ba was working free range. And look at what this man has done. Now, Ba single-handedly picked Alpha Capital, which the president should have halted him to say, hey, Moro, he went to the president to get an approval for that. So it's like whatever Ba was bringing to the president, he was just agreeing to it. Ba ended up resigning from that job and left. You know, we can actually hold Ba probably from the arm, but Ninkumbala is the president because he is the head of state who bears the bigger responsibility. When you give people responsibility, you need to account them on those responsibilities. But then, because we are coming from a dictatorship, if you want to tell people, but now, the lessons we are going to learn is that he allowed these people to work to the best interest of the country. But what did they do? They betrayed him and betrayed the country, and then it all bounces back on him.
So say, you know, Barrow coming out, you set up la lot of bottom bill like Plaso di Wol Plaso, the period dog work. But men kumaya to Jacona Sunday, will fail. Below it, Barrow is a Barrow blame other side. The most important is a Barrow blame other side, because even me for contact. But Macro Manu even okay, no, because you know, democracy the beginning the cable, you know, because Barrow he trusts them. These people. It's a privilege for them to Barrow Plaso di Mola.
Right.
So you can have for know to understand it very clearly. But remember, you know, no matter what, near Palaso, la Bila will be Palaso, Doko Gaminola, Doko Gaminoli, you know, you cannot Doko come, Doko Masalede. But Doko come in and Dingle Lebijan, Binky Lebijan, Barum Lebia, Doko Mosi Fali. You can even for them, very life, even for is very important. It's very important. What I need to call like, you know, but what am I problem with it? Don't problem with it.
Bare ni na raji be fana sa woron to lafta masa nyadi la ka ni mi yem muta aka micromanaging wasun ko mambetia mi yebula pour yedo ko kete banko tilimbalia. And then what problem will be namuru marika. So that is why, you know, leadership is so difficult that to a point that if you leave people at their will, they do evil and leave your government and go elsewhere to look for international jobs. And now they leave you with the boarding to actually prove to the citizenry what has gone wrong and right. So that is why in as much as you give people that responsibility, you need to account them for those responsibilities. But I know the president at some point gave Batambedu and other ministers that free will to do whatever they want.
Nimba Barrow doko dila kuma ka interfere doko ito mo kinu na famba fula mana doko kinu president ko no malam fuka understand nan kamin foide wala problem modi so Barrow is very lenient obviously no matter it's a Barrow is a kobe table but low credibility for diala kuma ka ke bula le yela free doko ke yela free doko but ito la ka fail anytime
Anu nabo do tembo don sabo ko sayan dictator lo mat. Kadu nimbaro ko sabe na ko len lamba falo ko dictator lo mat. But the whole point was that where was the cabinet? Where was the cabinet in all of this? Where was the National Assembly in all of this? Because maybe in Tenite, we will not actually look at to say what this is what the law said. I was not very much interested in the Jana Commission. What I was not even following it. I think at the time I was even studying, so that was probably what I was very much busy with. But the fact of the matter is that today Melville was able to tell me that these people did not even have a right to start selling those items before the end of the commission, and they did not even have a court order to start selling those items. But if the Ministry of Justice was more or less spearheading all of those instead of giving the legal advice to the president, where were we as a country?
Yeah, that's
so Barrow at this point need to call Batameri Afai ko another Tonyalo Lua Velarent and aiming and Lua Manta. It's not an inquiry. Call this man and then put him to whatever he needs, because until the whole point that another, this guy messed up Barrow.
No, absolutely.
And then he messed up Barrow. Amanda wala these people are mafias. Before these people came into government, they told us that Batambedu has international appointment, they have international experience here and there.
No, not understand. Barrow at the time Batambedu ko yala fuela kisikisoro gefana. It's na maybe it's a position so bam than all damento. Man foka understand kada wana fana fuela.
Yeah.
Half because I can't mean for them. Maybe say mole from mole ni fongo la my commission o yilla moy ani fongo dum fa député wol ne la may report ñu mek la ñaari le nana je Barrow beri atta ñaming bar gamino magne na kay lazy ñi nay no because mileso la tiñaare ñu lando including bata media mol fala atele one of the worst minister billahi wala gamino na me sodo
ada medo ga yaaje man mo do waaf dara ci wul lul
I see boy do ni dokumbola boy.
But anyway, but generally, what do you make up of all this, whatever? Because, in as much as we will portion some responsibilities to Bar and all that, at the end of the day now, it's all on the soldiers of the president. Nobody's saying Batambe to come out and speak to the nation. Because at the end of the day, na duta bankwe minta tambindi. At the end of the day, you are the one accountable to your people, because it's the president who appoints these ministers. And we expect you to appoint credible people. But of course, the president depends on your CV and your credibility and believes in your potential and appoint you. At the end of the day, you actually milk the nation. But aside, what exactly are we looking for in this case? Okay. What's the point?
Memo point, while Barrow I try, you fongo nyinga, I try, I telling you just akana ko komino binkila bijambare musula bijamin. Tonya ayo tamandi dorong. Tonya ni report nya ekana mo nya kono jibe. Ekana ko mo format. Tonya tamandi dorong. That is the only solution Mr. Keno. But in malam fabo kelal ba Barrow for sometimes akasilo bula bakle. Wala problem. Akasilo bula. That is the hard fact. Akasilo bula. Man sama nyana kasumaya teng, absolutely. Ni manka wait, mo nyana ka billahi wala ante.
So I am losing you. Melville, can you send in your request again? I'm not sure if you're still here, Mel. You can send in your request. More mute tele. So if we have another person coming in, we can basically get them on. Ilafenko mute tele. I don't know if you can check it out. All right, we kind of lost you. Sure. In short, in as much as we want to apportion, a certain part of responsibility to Bar and here and there, but let's put it into context. Mamadi Kurang brought this matter before the president. The president did not do anything about it. The president relied on Batambedu's recommendation to remove, Mamadi Kurang, and he did that. But what did Batambedu rely on to actually recommend for Mamadi Kurang's removal? He said he invited the commissioners to his office, and all they said was, we cannot work with this person. He actually invited the lead counsel, who said, I cannot work with this person. And then he told Mamadi Kurang to bring evidence, and then to him, Mamadi Kurang could not provide the evidence, and then he recommended for his sacking. First, he said he recommended for him to resign on his own because of their personal relations, and he doesn't want to stain his reputation. But ning ayata lako batambedu sontala alata lako tonya, what this person did was so wrong that he needed to be fired from the commission. Why did you care about his integrity if somebody did so wrong that he needed to be kicked out of the commission? But that also tells you a lot about Barrow not being interested in the truth, because when Mamadi Kurang brought in a complaint or whatever, a report to him, the president, as the president of the republic, needed to be fair to Alaji Mamadi Kurang as somebody he appoints into the commission, as Batambedu as somebody he actually appoints as Minister of Justice, and the commissioners as people he appoints as commissioners there, and to look at this fairly and then look at what exactly is in there and then communicate to the right authorities to see what could be done, rightly. But the president did not do that. He relied on Batambedu, an individual, to decide on all of these matters. The same Batambedu la control. After he invited, Augustus Prom to his office and they negotiated terms and conditions until they had an agreement. That means Batambedu single-handedly was actually dealing with all of these matters. So how could Batambedu as an individual just be the person on behalf of government dealing with issues as, cumbersome as this one regarding Yaya Jammeh's asset, that he negotiated terms and conditions with Augustus Prom until they gave him the initial contract? Now, to him, he said that naturally elapsed. But if it naturally elapsed, why did you need a commission recommendation to say remove Augustus Prom? Because if that has ended naturally, you don't need any decision from the commission to say remove Augustus Prom. The commission did not in any way appoint Augustus Prom. Augustus Prom was appointed by the government of the Gambia, just like the commission was actually instituted by the government. So how could that commission actually recommend the removal of Augustus Prom? But in as much as the commission, let's give him the benefit of the doubt that the commission recommended the removal of Augustus Prom. On what grounds did they do after a period of work? They did an appraisal and realized that he has fallen below standards and actually decided that because he has fallen below this threshold, we need to remove him? No, the commission was not responsible for that. The commission has no responsibility whatsoever to actually go about who the government appointed and who the government did not appoint. That was never their business, unless probably if Augustus Prom did something very wrong that the government felt that we need to remove you and replace you with somebody. Why was the commission moving out of its mandate to be recommended the removal of Augustus Prom as a receiver? That I do not understand. But it is Batambedu's criminal doings that he removed Augustus Prom and said his contract died naturally. But Batambedu went ahead to invite Alpha Capital into his office to negotiate terms and conditions. But Batambedu told us that he did not know Alpha Capital prior. And Alpha Capital was a company that was established in 2017. So in short, we know how things work in the Gambia. If I have a project that might do like $20,000 procurement of certain particular kind of goods, we've seen people who actually run projects in the Gambia and they need to buy seedlings. This is a sector I know. They need to buy seedlings of probably, 3-4 million or whatever. What do? They actually ask their family, friends, or associate to establish a seedling propagation center and register a seedling business and go and register with GPPA. By the time they are done with all those registrations, they go to those family members to buy the seedlings from them. This is exactly what Batambedu did in this case. What Ba did was to ensure that Alpha Capital goes and registers wherever they need to register in 2017. And shortly after that, he gave them that contract. They do not have any previous experience as a company. I'm not talking about the individuals there. But as a company, there is no previous experience working in this kind of a sector. There was no previous experience of conducting such kind of things prior. So on what basis did Batambedu replace Alpha Capital, with Augustus Prom? I don't understand it. You remove Augustus Prom and replace it with a company that was newly registered, a baby company that probably did not even have any experience in issues like this, dealing with the assets of a former president who ruled the country for 22 years. And then you did not do it in the basis that you invited different companies to look at the best among them. You just invited, this Alpha Capital that was just newly registered and then gave him that contract. And one of the people who was working for Alpha Capital was your probably friend. I think a lot of people use friend because they're probably afraid to say your girlfriend. And then you eventually, after all this whole nonsense, you went ahead and married that woman, and you want to tell us that you are innocent. Batambedu. When people listen and some of these riffraff lawyers are afraid to tell you the truth, but that is how the bar association is. That is Gambiango. You see some people, they jump with all these big titles and degrees. They have no integrity or shame or anything in them. And then for me, one thing I believe in, the origin of all education is from the home. It's not about the amount of academic credentials you possess, because at the end of the day, they amount to nothing if you have no integrity in you as an individual. You have no shame at all. Everything about you is how to be manipulative and be maneuvering to actually get results for yourself. And then you feel so good about that. This is what needs to end in our country. And this is exactly what we have seen the government did. I told Tafoland, let's come to the commission itself. Barrow told us that the commission was to check how Jammeh acquired all of this wealth. Tell me Jammeh is a mother, I agree. Tell me Jammeh is bad, I agree. But you cannot tell me that Jammeh has served in the army all the way and become president for 22 years and he owns nothing legally. What the commission should have done in their wisdom, or probably in the more productive or probably sensible way, would have been, this is what Jammeh owned legally. This is what Jammeh owned illegally. We seize everything he owned illegally, but we are going to seize, he's going to forfeit everything he owns legally because he was actually, doing a lot of terrible things in the country. Then we know, yeah, the kabra another president, nimpala askar de, assemble wasiya, but nyindo de awolu sunyal. But I don't condole ko ya jamela masiya nala do ko be mas sojari ani film. Everything he has was all stolen. Yon nan gendi wax lolu. That tells you that everything about this commission was a prejudice. Yeah, Tonya, you follow best practice. It's not always about the anger you harbor against people. And that is why sometimes we might not agree with Sabali, because I don't agree with him. He's probably my ex-friend because of all of these things. When people get into certain kind of politics, they think that that is where life ends. But the fact of the matter, sometimes it makes sense. Because if you tell me that Sabali can no longer work in government, we know Sabali and the lead counsel in that commission had issues. So there is basically animosity between these folks. And then if somebody had to decide that Sabali can no longer work in government simply because, he probably withdrew some money, how many people withdrew money from the Gambia? How many people took millions that probably did not belong to them, did not belong to Jammeh? So in all fairness, we cannot also say that everything that belongs to Jammeh was all stolen. What a kenola. So the best practice would have been 1-2 items, actually Jammeh got them legally. Every other thing he actually stole, and we are going to forfeit everything. But the commission told us that everything and anything that Jammeh owned was all stolen. Now, let's bring it into perspective. Before Barrow became president, Manchkamankunda was not built the way it is built. But we know before Barrow became president, he lived somewhere around Yarambamba. If now that it is clearly evident that Barrow is one of the most corrupt presidents in the Gambia, if he leaves, will we now forfeit everything that Barrow ever owns, even way before becoming president? Sometimes we give people the benefit of the doubt, irrespective of how evil, terrible, disgusting they are, because justice is just us. Would we now say that when Barrow leaves as president, we are going to forfeit everything that he owns? Kota president o president nata yefe ngo fensoro nungu yebe inata mingo misoro president yako na ningaje ko tapaleani ntingo mantama jimbabe talebul. And we know some of these Jammeh assets actually were given to some militants of Adama Barrow by his regime. So Barrow himself is the chief, and the chief is now in this case a thief. Barrow is as guilty as any other person. And now you tell me that Barrow's own NPP, parliamentarians are going to investigate him. Why dunia iko it's a baranya onya simaya dua kodo beje. You think that you would never, I never thought I could ever witness that Fabakary Tombo would sit in the National Assembly to preside over looted assets by Jammeh that are also being looted by Batambedu and Co. So that means Barrow's ministers failed him. But that is why when some of us are telling him that this minister you appointed is in the wrong place, he's not the right person for the job, don't pick people on the basis of relationship or family ties. And then the likes of Bade will tell us, oh, they got international appointment, they are only here to help the country. Those folks never came to help the country. Somebody who left an international job to come and help the country, but quit the country's job for another international appointment. He came there to polish his CV, to better himself and put himself in a better standing, capitalize on that Gambia case at Myanmar, whatever, and then put himself in a better position, and then left the job where he already made millions through his girlfriend. Because Omoto Dolby soba Dama is more than 5,000. So how can you sell a vehicle for 5,000? It's just like me knowing fully well that Lamin Drama is my very good friend, and I know that this particular project and I work in government. I ask him to go and register a particular company, and then I give him all the money to actually run that. That is conflict of interest. That is conflict of interest. So we cannot be dilly-dallying here. And then the president shot himself on the foot, because if you tell us that when they give you the report, you know that the report was incomplete, but for 5 years you never asked them for a complete report until Mustafa had to do this investigation. What exactly were you expecting? The report to fall from the sky? Were you expecting that the report was going to Lamin Drame was going to bring you the report? Barrow was expecting you to take the full report to him. I heard you also bought, a limousine there for. Imagine selling a vehicle for less than $100. I was just telling this to a friend today, earlier on. He was like, "Dude, you're talking too much about on the phone." Like, I was following somebody's live. I said, our former president used to be a dictator. He has an insatiable desire for luxurious wealth. He has limousines here and there and all kind of vehicles. But some of his vehicles were sold for less than $100. The dude was staring at me like, are you for real? That is how Barrow has reduced our country to the level of corruption is unimaginable. It's on a scale that nobody could ever imagine. So the complicity of the government in this whole case is nothing that you can mend. And Dr. Ismail Assis's trial to actually, polish it actually has dirtied it further, because he said, you see those limousines and other vehicles that are still looking very dusty in State House were not sold because the office of the president said the people who wanted to buy them were paying, prices that were not up to the, the value of those materials. So tell me, the people who were buying the vehicles for $5,000, did they buy them at the values? Why didn't the office of the president stop those folks from doing that? If the office of the president has that mandate to actually stop or allow people to do whatever, why didn't they stop that? So if they could stop the sale of the limousines and then allow the sales of other items for $5,000, then the office of the president is complicit in this whole matter, and Barrow cannot be excused because he bears the biggest responsibility in this whole case. The speech might look very good to all of you, but at the end of the day, the National Assembly is another conflicted party that cannot actually give us any fruition in this investigation. Because in National Assembly, the person they actually put as a chairman is part of the the former legislation, many along they shared people's lands. They went to Yundum and took lands from the natives and shared it among themselves. Even if those lands belong to the state, why will the National Assembly share state lands among themselves? Are they more Gambian than you and I? Because you are voted into a government position, you think you can just go and share public property? State property shared among ministers. State property shared among National Assembly members. Are all of these people not thieves? So how can a thief investigate a thief? How can a criminal investigate a criminal? But it is the same people that will go to people's compounds and destroy everything that they build. They work their whole entire life to build a little house. The government will come and destroy it, but the same government will go and share state lands among themselves. Just like what some Gambia posted, or I had posted like 2 weeks ago about the lands they shared among ministers in Brufut Heights. But they forfeited those lands from Jammeh and then shared it among themselves. How and why? You said Jammeh was a thief. He took all our lands. We agree. You see, you actually recovered this land and shared it among your ministers. What do you call your ministers? On top of it, Batambedu tried to justify the need for selling some of those lands at the TDA area, that there was an investor here and there. Now, investor in Lua, which one would you take? Because of an investor, you've decided to go against the existing laws of our country. You as the justice minister, and you want to justify that? That nigga is fucking corrupt, man. And then you still see some media houses inviting him to come and talk. What does this guy got to say? This guy has got to be arrested and prosecuted for wrongdoing. Well, I might dig him against my fatty when I comment, what Barrow said. That nigga is nothing, bro. Along Gambia, metonya la fonda nyoye. Tonya banko ka tamu wala manke nyin tapale ya nintilimbale barola masa kunda nyanta boyla nyamasa kunda. This government should have a vote of no confidence because they don't deserve nothing, including its parliament. Because these are folks who will take taxpayers' money to go and buy themselves luxurious vehicles. And they turn around and say, oh, we are paying part of the money, it's coming. But where is that part of the money coming from? Some of you people like that boy, Mimbe Alonko, he was insulting the young people, calling them, mice and roaches. Afomandia, along, but, I know this nigga from way back at Gambia College. From there, Ngamra back where he came back from Germany. He was doing some taxi driving. One time I was, in his taxi driving down Senegambia end, and all of a sudden he became a politician. I was like, dude, we are happy for you, man. Good luck. You're a young man. This same guy from a $7 turntable, you see yourself in a luxurious Prado. You have the guts to look at people and tell them and call them roaches. And you still come out and say, oh, no, I don't mean this. I don't mean that. You see the arrogance. You see the lack of comportness. You look at him and then you understand that this is a person who does not even deserve a classroom that he was probably teaching. And he writes, you don't even understand if he's writing English or Japanese. And this is the person who is making laws for the Gambia. You cannot express yourself, but you can write laws for us. You have the guts to call the young people roaches. Ita fisiara jumalati wolkon. Ita wulunyani nyara jumalti wolkon. Ita la Gambia diya fisiara jumalti wolkon. You know that you look at people and you call them roaches. Demba yo yange na $7 turntable Senegambia BT National Assembly because you now see yourself driving in parados paid by taxpayers' money, and then you have the guts and the audacity to call those people roaches. Hey bro, waktu jot na pour ñu waxante dëgg de. Nobody is going to give you people tarfatal ay ni léegi fii. Bu yàqu na yàqu rek. Waaye foog ñu waxante dëgg. Yow demba nga jógee fii nii, and then you have the audacity and the gods is what I don't even get. You stand in that assembly, said the people were protesting against the law. Oh, but corruption is not against the law. Deliberately selling vehicles for less than $100 is not against the law. That was very okay. That was that was quite very a big thumb up from you. That the people who were protesting against people looting resources belonging to the state were criminals, and they're basically people against the law, and they are roaches, right? Yo yaay nit ñooñu ay roaches lañ. Yow lan nga gën ñan nga gën bro. Dafa nekk ne comme I know you as a very very young nice man. Back then at Gambia College used to be like that very funny cool Paco. Maybe I'm not it. Sometimes you get to certain positions yo xamante ne musuloo ko gomee da nga dee foog ne aduna fa la yem. But for you, the end of the world is just that National Assembly. And then you taught the rest of the people who have different opinions, who thought something wrong should not be happening in our country, are roaches. But those roaches, those people you call roaches, are probably better than you, because you cannot even execute your functions. Because if you cannot write a basic Facebook post with all that nonsensical grammar, how are you able to make laws for the Gambia? How are you even able to understand and interpret those laws that you are making if you cannot write a simple apology letter? That goes to tell the kind of people we have in our National Assembly. But these are the same people that, you jump from your, 5 by 5 meters amulokosa, you come and they just give you state land, and then you think life ends there. They give you clothing allowance, and then you think that is where life ends, and then you can call anybody roaches. But those who vote for you basically are the roaches, probably. Because yo, bo mune hold domi adam nga ne ñooñu ay cockroach ngeen. Yo domi adam ay ñoo la fal. Yo da nga gen ñooñu be di lan oye roaches. And then su ñoo waxante dega. If it is not just going to be elected in whatever, yo bo taxawé ak ñooñu si ñooñu noonu yépp, everybody combined, bro, amuloo loo xam lu ñooñu xamul. There is nothing you know better than any of those. Amante nañ de fa ñolon kunda konto ñini ngati ji al nga do man no ñofe e be to ñala fa sala wara ye de bareta mol jibele ko len nem bala firmo len tilimbal yakam because ya mirete mu MP let. What made you an MP? From taxi driving into National Assembly, and you think you are a big man? Yo bude na tare ita manke cockroach ti wede fisiara cockroach o ita dara no bakwe. Ide se na wore na ire mol jibe min yalon ko ita man fisia wol ita wulu nyama nyinya wol ita ko ka fole wol mu cockroach wol let. Ita fisiara wol. But your principal, Adam Barrow, came out to apologize that what was happening was fundamentally wrong. And you can see the guilt in him, that his government is now known worldwide as one of the most corrupt governments in Africa, that could sell a vehicle for less than $100. I have never heard that anywhere in my life, that a government could sell like vehicles for less than like $100, boy. My bro, motor we we then go change manago bro. Sandal motor B, that's just a little BMW 3 Series. Them nga jenda motor si Adam Barrow 5,000 la ko gaay neka di jaay. Come sama boy Alonso. Iraga mola muro samba fidalia. Saya manjere muro samba fidaya, you know, ta Adam Barrow ya muro sanje 5,000. Because adala masakunda collect. And then you look at some of the permanent secretaries who were buying some of these, cars, and also, the beds and all of those things. You are a permanent secretary of a regime. You said you go and buy James asset. You hamgane bena lal silal it's probably over 100,000. And you think James would actually buy lal bo and is going to cost like $2,000. Ban lal samoy ko an pajaso from buga ke 2,000 anymore. I don't like that. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will probably, draw the code in here. But in short, what we were trying to say is that Barrow's speech in English was a little bit different from Barrow's speech in Mandinka. And I believe that the English version was something written for him to read. And I, of course, support that he had read that and, of course, probably made some sense that, his government is going to take actions. But I don't believe in the actions that Barrow's government is going to take because Barrow himself is the principal accomplice in this whole case. And secondly, Barrow's statement in Mandinka that, Tabriya report be samana ngalo na ko report dole be je wafuro ke nyame nyimbaga so wafu nyame and then ye wafu jumalle yani wafu dal minna it was not included in the report. But Barrow never bothered himself in one way or another to find out where the missing part of the report was. Barrow said he knows that ngalo na ko lumbe sila report be findila but report be findila nyade for report ba fon findindila or by divine intervention the report will just appear from nowhere. So this is basically what the president told us. So when we are actually looking at the president's speech, we actually look at it holistically, not just the English version, but as well. I mean from Fangala Kawalan Kamweko, President Wayanafo. What it be Masia Minako, it a Mulbula Doku, or near Doku, Ebuka Doku Labang, and Nima Labang Fanate, you don't care to ask them, the missing pieces within those reports. So President I will have fun jam. So that means the president is complicit. Who knows the president probably has some of the assets in his name because reports are coming out. The property by the former Daily Observer by Bakau Primary School, that very, luxurious looking story building, we got to know who owns it. And that was one of Jammeh's former assets. And one of the vehicles that was given to one Jammeh guy in Brikama, an NPP, surrogate by the president, belongs to Jammeh. So some of these items, the president's hands are already dirty in the whole case. Who is going to investigate the president? I saw Cisse to be the chairman of the, I wouldn't talk. Cisse is a credible person based on my personal whatever. That's somebody I know from the university. One time was in one of my courses. We have a very positive personal relation, and some of those relations are quite better to protect. But I don't believe in the National Assembly and whatever it's got to do. I don't believe in the fact that the National Assembly can bring about justice in this case. I believe that the National Assembly in itself, in its establishment, is complicit because APRC, they are complicit in this. UDP, they are complicit in this. NPP, they are complicit in this. So which NAMs are going to actually, bring about the truth? Conflicted parties? No, they cannot. Because during the sale of these items, all of these, parties were involved in government. Khadija, what do you want? All of these parties were involved in government. So if something like that happened now, those people cannot be the persons who are going to actually bring about justice because they were part of the government when these activities were happening. The whole thing is that is the government to take full responsibility and then bring Batambedu and other people and prosecute them for the wrongdoings. But of course, we still comment that they could go and do whatever, investigation, whitewash at the nyaming, and then come out and tell us something else because their principal is more or less, guilty of it. And then if you told us that everything Jammeh ever owned was basically stolen, by the time you leave Power Barrow, all the houses, this man Kamankunda and all the story buildings you're building now, when you become president, the 200 million you got, it jump it from nowhere, you got 200 million in your account. It kono ita min ni wo $5 mbuso kata ni jakal ni fanting wala serakunda balla all of a sudden you have over 200 million ite obona mundo ite fana be jila lungo minna we will seize everything because already your government is more or less considered to be one of the most corrupt government that the Gambia would ever even think of alman toltan kala nyama sakunda sifawra dami ya long ko ebuka long sungol ni sunsuluto min garawta minti so that's just it. And then up till date, you cannot still produce us the list of the cows, the goats, the sheep, and the camels, the tiles. Niko ebe konti leta bana. beta. Atol fana muruntan tol ko sayo ka Gambia, we are going to get back all those resources. So control the Brufut Heights in Jigeda, okay, now Brufut Heights, Jammeh took most of these lands and government recovered them. They probably would give it to community or probably take part and give part to the community. But I'm okay, ya talai la minister le team. Atol la minister le barakaran tolti. Adola minister mambontol satel to bal mamboje fal mamboje wol like they have nothing to do in our community whatsoever, but they all own lands in our communities where you and I cannot, like, some of us born and raised cannot even buy land in Bruford Heights simply because they'll come and ask you 10 million, 15 million, 20 million in our own community. But then ministers can have it for free because they are ministers. Alman Karanti, Alman Dunia Longinti, Alman Dunia Tamanti. How and why? That is how your government works? Isn't that even abuse of office and corruption? That you forfeited things from Jammeh and then you share it among your ministers. Another government will come, they will forfeit it from your ministers and give it to Gambians. Because everything that Jammeh own, landed properties are easy because ibuka banko wulindi na sa banko doka. Motol maybe also wafuno moli oborni beti nya kodo ali abula la jibol kono, no problem. But landed assets, those ones are very easy. So even all those compounds you are building in Fajara and some of them belonging to either the Chief Justice or whatever, ntaka mole ko alkana baro batani nataka ka mula dulala taka bungo loje. Bungo bukata mo buko wutu inaita dulado. Abejila lungo meneko be tabule afa ko ta si manka mankunda. It's as simple as that. Ning manka mankunda si o be tara la je fam. Karo ite police ol fa jane la masa kundale police ol fa. Ebejila lungo menay ngale be resambale de sorom. Ya jama sake o Canada la border tara equatorial Guinea. Maybe you might not have that opportunity to actually run away. So it's better you start correcting a lot of wrongs in your government. And by the end of your this term, ita sila hajola. Eman ku jaw tab lan na tambike na man ke yin corruption jaw da ne police ol minufa. Ane ale mo le minufa farawa. So it's better by the end of this time you just quit and go, because if you want to continue being president in the Gambia, you will ruin this country, because already you have brought the country to its knees. The dollar is worthless. At the end of the day, corruption is institutionalized in your government. Barrow, balafa molie. Ela masa kundanya nda balafa la Gambia no lela wayi. So ladies and gentlemen, I think we got to draw the curtains here. The president actually made statements that basically shot himself on the foot, that he was so complicit in this whole corrupt malpractices that were happening within the commission. And of course the commissioners cannot be excused in it, but Tambedu is the chief, he cannot be excused from it, trying to say, oh, I did not benefit from anything personally. Go na diata momo, you can put any name, because ale to ke odla ila ID card mantaraje, ila ID card number mantaraje, ila telephone number mantaraje. I can just take a list and put 100 names. Like I said the other day in my video, I was doing a consultancy for this government institution, and whereas Molmimbe Holokon were not more than 50, but then the guy heading it was telling his subordinates, Al Qaeda will be funding, and ila Qaeda will balangalo ne to minke jabe 200 silal. Who is going to verify Carlo Njuman? Even Alma ID card number. Who knows who is this Seydou Jallo? Who knows who is whatever name that you people are putting? And then follow the Nyamen Siva Bele, and then all of a sudden, all of your James wealth becomes scrap. Koya jama demon fenkende so that scrap duran sa kama koya jama mo nyama to la ka scrap will sanandro. And we all know James' desire for luxurious wealth. That means everything that you people did was not right. You cannot call James' vehicle scrap. O manke to nyat obe mu tapale yalet. Ya jame nala jame dunia kadileti. Dunia diara way obukala fi kundina. So everything that he was buying is all this big and luxurious stuff. We know that. And then all of a sudden, from just nothing, and everything that belongs to Jammeh was scrap. That you could actually go. $100 moto kodolo famo, it all worth for 5,000. So ko Jammeh la moto mini alon ko hane killing na soba killing fam soba killing might be more than 5,000. So how could you actually say that you can sell a vehicle for 5,000? Nana more corruption sifa mo dunia dulat. We used to say Macky Sall was corrupt, but the level of corruption to the level that you can sell a car for $5,000, no, bobo musama ko diga. Bobo record la. So your government is complicit. It's a shame that Gambians have a lot of trust, hope in this government. But where did it all end? From 3 years to one thing, from one thing to another, Yara fangwa. Ogise nyom bata mere nyo. Wait. Be fania atare bebe tapaliaring. I wala kejang mola that NIA 9 case dia la broda la ja wala banda munala. Ita be momi fon prosecute ka ita kala fi ko wala musuko. Ita mun lawyer sifal. Imo fon samba court for abuse of office. But you just say, oh, just resign and go. What is that? So you people from the beginning to the end, you were more or less complicit in everything you were doing. This was not a responsible government at all. The level of irresponsibility and negligence, gross negligence, and lack of care for the well-being of the Gambians was quite visible from start. Allah masakunda manke masakunda tilinda manke masakunda minyanda continue Gambia. And then I think Gambians basically need to give you a red card because you don't deserve to lead that country even for the next 48 hours because what you did is unbearable. And then seeing Sumaila Sisen, they said, dunia falling sulari. Well, I don't just rush to believe in people. Today you told us that the limousines and so on were still there because you're trying to do damage control, and then you think showing people those dusty vehicles saying they're still here, and then when asked why they were not sold, you said the price the people were offering was, quite below the valuation of those vehicles, and the office of the president did not agree with those sales. So why did the office of the president agree with the sales of vehicles for 5,000? If they did not agree with this, that means they have, that prerogative to actually say no to some of the things. Why didn't they say no to some of those? That becomes the bigger question. But tonyata koma alla nyimbe mo damage control the but nyalong is a tapale ya you try to control the damages, there will always be a loophole. Just like the killing of the cops. You told us that, Usain Bojan killed the cops. To this day you cannot actually prove it. And it has been proven beyond reasonable doubt that the dude has nothing to do with it. And then it has also, shown a lot of indication that the government of the Gambia in one way or another is responsible for killing the cops for their political reasons. And then you brought in a suit that you said he wore during the killing and the suit did not fit him. So Allah Sakunda from one criminality to another. By the time all of these things compound, Barrow, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, and you all have a wonderful night. Goodbye.